Lin Jian did not mince words in his opening statement. He said, China has always advocated for inclusive and beneficial economic globalization, opposed all forms of unilateralism, protectionism, and discriminatory and exclusionary measures, and firmly opposed any coercion by others to impose restrictions on China under various pretexts, which undermines China's legitimate rights and interests. We will resolutely safeguard our interests in accordance with actual circumstances. This statement, one of the most pointed of the briefing, highlights China's broader frustration with what it perceives as rising global protectionism, particularly from countries that had previously been seen as partners in emerging markets. Mexico's proposed tariffs are part of a broader debate about industrial competitiveness in North America. With Chinese electric vehicles making significant inroads into global markets, governments from Washington to Brussels to Mexico City are scrutinizing the balance between free trade and protecting domestic industries. For China, the move from Mexico represents not just an economic barrier, but also a symbolic challenge from a fellow member of the Global South. Lin sought to emphasize the shared interest between the two countries. He said China and Mexico are both important members of the Global South. Mutual benefit and win-win are the essential characteristics of China-Mexico economic and trade cooperation. China attaches great importance to the development of China-Mexico relations and hopes that Mexico will move forward in the same direction with China to jointly promote world economic recovery and the growth of global trade. This dual messaging, firm opposition coupled with appeals to solidarity, reflects Beijing's balancing act. On the one hand, it wants to project strength against what it sees as unfair trade practices. On the other, it does not want to alienate Mexico, which it views as a vital partner in its global South-South cooperation strategy. The second half of the press conference turned to the South China Sea, where the Philippines has protested Beijing's reported plans to establish a national-level nature reserve around Scarborough Shoal, known in China as Huangyantou. The shoal, a triangular chain of reefs and rocks roughly 120 miles off the Philippine coast, has long been a flashpoint in regional maritime disputes. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines, rejecting China's expansive claims in the area. Beijing, however, dismissed the ruling and has since strengthened its presence around the contested waters. Lin Jian reiterated China's position with unwavering language. He said, Huangyantou Island is China's inherent territory, and the establishment of a national-level nature reserve at Huangyantou is a matter wholly within China's sovereign rights. The announcement has alarmed Manila, which sees the move as an escalation of China's control over the shoal. Philippine officials argue that such actions undermine regional stability and infringe on their exclusive economic zone. Beijing, however, has consistently rejected Manila's interpretation of maritime boundaries. Lin reinforced this by pointing to historical treaties. He said, the territorial scope of the Philippines has long been defined by a series of international treaties, and Huangyantou Island has never been part of it. China does not accept the groundless accusations or so-called protests from the Philippine side. We urge the Philippines to immediately cease its infringements, provocations, and wanton hype so as to avoid adding complicating factors to the maritime situation. China's dual confrontations on Thursday reveal both the scope and limits of its foreign policy strategy. With Mexico, Beijing is confronting economic challenges linked to its rapid rise in the electric vehicle and manufacturing sectors. With the Philippines, it faces persistent disputes over maritime sovereignty that risk sparking broader regional tensions involving the United States and other allies. Observers note that the timing is significant. Mexico's tariffs, if implemented, could disrupt billions of dollars in trade and affect China's positioning in Latin American markets. At the same time, the Scarborough Shoal dispute threatens to inflame already sensitive relations between China and Southeast Asia, where the US has deepened security partnerships. The press conference served as a reminder of how interconnected China's global challenges have become. Economic disputes in one hemisphere can collide with security disputes in another, leaving Beijing with little room to maneuver without risking escalation. International reaction to Beijing's remarks is likely to be mixed. Economists suggest that Mexico's tariffs, if enacted, could raise costs for consumers while protecting domestic industries. For China, however, the symbolism matters as much as the economic impact, given its push to lead the Global South in resisting what it calls Western-dominated economic structures. On the South China Sea, regional analysts warn that declaring a nature reserve at Scarborough Shoal could be viewed as a soft power tactic that cloaks strategic control in environmental language. While conservation is the stated purpose, the establishment of such a reserve would almost certainly entail restrictions on fishing, navigation, and other activities in the area, effectively extending Beijing's administrative control. Manila's protests are unlikely to subside. The Philippine government, emboldened by its treaty obligations with the United States, has shown increasing willingness to challenge China's claims, even at the risk of confrontation. Behind the diplomatic language and firm statements, the issues carry direct consequences for ordinary people. In Mexico, tariffs on Chinese cars could mean higher prices for consumers and potential shifts in employment within the auto industry. In the Philippines, fishermen who rely on Scarborough Shoal's waters for their livelihoods could see access restricted further, heightening economic hardship in coastal communities. These human stories often get overshadowed in the high-level exchanges of press conferences, but they remain central to understanding the stakes of international disputes. Thursday's press conference by Lin Jian captured the essence of China's current diplomatic posture, a blend of assertiveness, appeals to solidarity, and defiance of external criticism. On Mexico, Beijing is resisting what it sees as protectionism, while urging cooperation under the banner of the Global South. On the Philippines, it is doubling down on its sovereignty claims while dismissing protests as baseless. The outcome of both disputes remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. China is determined to show that it will not be coerced, whether through tariffs or territorial protests, and that it will continue to assert its role as a major player shaping global trade and security.